Hello, everyone. Bobby Jones here from MeidasTouch and Valor Media Networks. And I am here with a very dynamic young congressional candidate here in the United States in a very, very, how do I put this, important district in the upcoming midterm elections. I'd like to introduce everyone to Mr. James Martin, running for United States Congress out of Florida District 21. Thank you for joining us, James.
Thanks so much for having me, Bobby. I've really been looking forward to this.
Well, we're glad to have you. So you have a unique background. I mean, you're a young individual, but you have done a lot of stuff in a short amount of period of time. Can you just give everyone just a little bit about your background, which again, is very unique?
Sure. So I am, among other things, a proud, and the reason for being here, a proud Coast Guard veteran. I'm a graduate of the U.S. Coast Guard Academy and the Naval War College. I was a cutterman in the Coast Guard, so I served on 4 different ships from Florida to the Arabian Gulf, including as the executive officer or second in command for those landlubbers out there of a Coast Guard cutter over in the Arabian Gulf. And then I actually served as the commanding officer of 2 ships here in South Florida. And then sort of the rest of my Coast Guard career included some policy roles at the White House, which were very unique and interesting. And that culminated in actually my last tour of duty on active duty was serving as the chief of staff of the vice president's national security team.
That is quite the phenomenal background to start from the bottom as you know, an incident and to reach those heights in a relatively short amount of time. Let me ask you this. What was it about your upbringing that made you to even decide to do that?
Sure. It's a great question and one that I like to talk about on the trail, because I always tell folks my path to public service was really sort of informed by a love of wild Florida. And one of the things we haven't talked about yet is I'm a 4th generation Floridian and local to the district in which I'm running. And so as a kid growing up, was always outside, and in particular grew up fishing, diving, surfing. And so when it came time to choose my way in life, the Coast Guard was a natural extension of being on the water in the way in which I grew up. And it was a perfect way to meld my desire to serve our country with that love of the water.
Well, it's a very unique way to go. And one of the things I don't think most people realize about the United States Coast Guard, you guys go into harm's way every day, and you do so for the safety of others. And it's truly admirable. Along those lines, you were one of those Coast Guardsmen that got to go, like you said, abroad to the Arabian Gulf, Persian Gulf, whichever one you want to call it. With everything that's going on right now with the United States, Israel, and Iran, what does your personal experience tell you about what we're witnessing right now?
Sure. So I think among other things, I think as I've been talking about the Iran conflict on the campaign trail and to folks who ask me, the first thing that I have to say about what's going on is it's very clear that there's no plan, there's no strategy, and we've been given 5 to 6 to 7, depending on the reasons you want to listen to, reasons for why we're there and what we're doing there. And not just as someone who's worn the uniform, but as someone who has served over there. And, you know, as I tell folks sometimes, you know, as someone who has had Iranian guns pointed at me several times in my life in various interactions with the IRGCN, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, I know firsthand the ramifications of our actions when we do undertake as a country some of these short-sighted foreign policy actions. And to me, it's unacceptable. And obviously, we're going to talk about the role of Congress and all this, but to me, it's unacceptable to send our troops into harm's way with no plan and no strategy.
I totally agree. And we have similar backgrounds. I was in charge of a task group out there to do exactly what you were doing. And you're right. When you have been on that deck plate level and see what the IRGCN and those do, and then you hear, hey, we're going to try to force open the Strait of Hormuz, you're looking around like, are they not paying attention? Which leads to the point of where the heck is Congress, right? what should they be demanding? If that was you in that seat right now, what would you be doing?
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, it's I understand when folks want to say, well, Congress needs to approve the authorization of military force. And I understand that intellectually, but I also understand how folks in some of the criticisms of that who would say, well, that's basically just arguing that we're for the war, but we didn't like the paperwork being filled out. I think an even deeper understanding of it and a more sophisticated understanding, which I have been trying to talk about on the trail and educate folks, is the reason that Congress needs to be involved in these decisions is not just, stamping the decision. It's the fact when you talk about, and this is going to be a little bit esoteric for some folks, but something you'll appreciate well, we've really gone through a significant portion of our strategic munitions stockpile of various calibers. And that is to the point where it's going to take years to replenish those. And these are things that are being used in the war in Ukraine, right? These are things that are going to be extremely significant in any sort of conflict with China. And to have any administration, whether it's the Trump administration or a Democratic administration, unilaterally deplete these stockpiles that are going to take years to replenish, that's why we have a governor. That's why we have that check on these, so that Congress can weigh in and say, well, hey, this is going to take, half of our, Patriot interceptors for one example.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Informed oversight.
That's
because what we're currently dealing with is an administration, to be very blunt, that has no strategic vision whatsoever. It's like what's in front of us right here, and the rest of it be damned. So let's boil that down to where you're running right now. Florida District 21. Can you just tell us about the district and what's unique about it?
Sure. Well, I'd love to do that, but I think a great bridge between the war in Iran and the district is our congressman, Brian Mast, is currently chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And he should be the one who is taking point on asking some of these tough questions about putting our troops in harm's way. And one of the things I often cite on the campaign trail, and one of my chief criticisms of Mr. Mast, is that he's a veteran himself of the war in Afghanistan. So in many respects, he knows better. So that's something I would, maybe set the table with. The 21st Congressional District is on the east coast of Florida. It's all of St. Lucie County, all of Martin County, and northern Palm Beach County, down to about West Palm Beach. It's a weird kind of gerrymandered line, but that gives folks the rough idea.
Now, when you're on the trail, what are you hearing people say? What do they see as the biggest issues that's facing them?
Sure. Overwhelmingly, I hear the cost of living crisis in Florida in particular. I think that manifests as property insurance, certainly groceries, the cost of household goods. And then I would say it also manifests in other ways, right? Obviously, Florida, pretty large immigrant population. So some of the immigration enforcement is being felt pretty hard, both on the small business front, but as well as, my view on immigration is that we need it to be safe, fair, transparent, and humane, because not only is that the right thing to do, for my Republican friends, that's what is going to have international companies want to invest in America, because we're stable and predictable. When we have some of what's going on now, that's not stable and it's not predictable. So I would say that's a snapshot of what I hear on the trail.
Well, these are practical points that you're raising. Immigration has also been the biggest boon of bringing innovation into the country. And I completely agree with you when it's about transparency, fairness, humanity as we go along the line. You've been able to see a lot of things in your career, right? And you're able to bring that to the people of the 21st Congressional District. If you could change anything that you see in Florida or even in the United States, what would that priority be? What do you think right now your people need the most?
Sure. Well, this might be a counterintuitive answer, but I think it's an important one, and I'll explain why. I think one of the biggest impediments to making some of the big changes we want to make is getting money out of politics. And I'll unpack that. So I think that no matter whether it's take your pick, whether it's you want to regulate AI, whether it's you want to roll back some of the antitrust issues surrounding our food supply, like breaking up some of the food monopolies, breaking up some of these big tech monopolies, take your pick. We can't do it until we get big money and dark money out of politics, because that's what is going to prevent us from making those changes, when I get to Congress. So I think while it might seem longer lead, it's necessary to be able to make those other changes that we want to see.
No, wow. That's a very, very well thought out answer. And to be completely blunt and honest, not an answer that you hear out of many candidates, because it's almost like you're biting the hand that is supposed to feed you. But the fact that you're saying that, I love it, because it's almost like there's this return to the people and the ripping away of corporations in our electoral process. James, I cannot thank you enough. First, I just want to thank you for your service, both in and out of uniform. And now I can only wish you the best of luck as you move forward. I mean, I think you're tailor-made for the district you're running in.
Well, thanks so much for saying that, Bobby. And of course, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share my story and a little bit of my vision for the 21st district. And as I always say, if you like what you hear, come to jamesmartinforflorida.com to join the team and to deliver real leadership to both this district and this great country. So looking forward to making a change here. And thanks so much for being a small part of it.
No problem. And once again, that's jamesmartinforflorida.com. Please go to his website, learn more about his unbelievable story and what he has planned for both Florida and the United States Congress. Thanks for having us.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.